We are impacted on many ways. Firstly, we have South African farmers who are farming in Ukraine, but we also have South African farmers who are farming in Russia. They are on both sides of this conflict. We have a very good relationship as South African farmers with ACOR, the National Farmers Organization in Russia, and we literally have weekly liaison with them. But so do we have with the Ukrainian farmers, from whom we import quite a lot of our staple foods. Between the two, between Russia and Ukraine, they export more than 30% of all the grain that cross borders in the world. Ukraine is amongst the biggest producers in 10 different groups of grain, of which sunflower is the biggest. We get a lot of our cooking oil from the Ukraine. But more than that, there is so much communication between farmers in South Africa and farmers in Ukraine in study groups on grains, on WhatsApp, and various other social media platforms. And you know, the farmers are always the last to leave when there is a war. We have seen that in World War I, we have seen it in the Second World War, we have seen it in so many wars in between, in Korea, in Vietnam, and now we see it again. Whilst people are vacating the cities and the bigger towns, the farmers are not going anywhere. On the one hand, they are not so densely populated, so they are usually not the ones being bombed. But they have crops on the fields, they have livestock to nurture. And sadly enough, they are the ones who are hanging on there and who are really picking up the bill for the rural dimension of this war. They spoke to us this morning and said tanks and convoys are moving through their fields, are moving across their pastures. There's breakdowns on tanks. They run out of fuel. And of course, the farmstead is the closest. And then they are directly in the line of confrontation. The Russian soldiers demand from them assistance to fix an engine. They want diesel, they want food. And it seems in every way that the logistics in this war is not working out as it was planned. And we hear that from the farmers on the ground.
But you talk about crops on the field. This implies that that with people leaving the cities, fleeing to other parts of Europe, that there's no market to sell these crops when it's time for it to come off the field.
You know, in any war, the market is exploding. Then there's a grab for foodstuffs. We see it again now. The demand is extremely high. The logistics is the problem. It's not possible to get the food where we have the surpluses to the areas in which we have the deficits. And remember, we are right at the beginning of the production season in the Ukraine. So many fields have been plowed. Those which have not been plowed, they must plow it in the next week or two. And then it's planting season in their springtime. The winter crops is being harvested. Much of it is already off. Where it's not off, it is very urgent to get it off so that they can prepare the fields for the new season. But then there's a massive demand right next door in Russia. The whole world is blocking Russia now. There's a lot of our products from South Africa, apples and pears, citrus, which have been harvested this week, that was earmarked for the Russian markets, and now there's no market for it. So in agricultural terms, the downstream value chain has been disrupted, and farmers are desperately looking for, on the one hand, new markets, and on the other hand, new lines of logistics. As one farmer said to me yesterday, I have no choice. I must get my stuff to Russia. I have not diversified my markets. That's my only export destination. And I said to him, but the whole world is now blocking the trade with Russia. We are not allowed to export there. He said, even if I wanted to, the ships are no longer going to those harbors. And how can you guys help me to find a new market outlet for the citrus?
This also brings another interesting dimension to geopolitics from an agricultural viewpoint. And you talk about two specific groups. The one is South African farmers in Ukraine, the other is South African farmers in Russia, with the whole world, most of the world standing up against Russia. And here you sit with these two groups of farmers that come from the same point. How did you experience that dynamic between the two different groups in that part of the world?
No, they go for each other's throats. Farmers are always very loyal and they are very patriotic. And in this case, we heard early on, a few months before the war started, we heard from our colleagues in Russia complaining that the Ukrainian government has closed some Russian mother tongue schools in the eastern parts of the Ukraine. Now remember, we also have a very close relation with the Hungarian farmers organization, NAC. The Farmers Association, they facilitated a large number of scholarships and bursaries, for example, for veterinarian students who did not get access in South Africa to study to become a veterinarian. So the Ukrainian farmers have assisted us to get access to Ukrainian universities, not only for veterinarians, also for a number of other lines in the agricultural space. And then those Ukrainian farmers also said to us, we can have sympathy with you for the schooling system in South Africa where Afrikaans is under pressure, because exactly the same has happened to us in the Ukraine. There are close to 300,000 Ukrainians, Hungarians in the Ukraine, and Ukrainian education is under pressure there. So you will see that the farmers of South Africa kind of have sympathy for the language issues and for the forced creation of a new national entity. But on the other hand, the images that is being passed on social media of schools being bombed, of children getting killed in this war, of course have a massive impact on the moral issues in this war. And both of them, even from our colleagues in the Russian organization, they all said it was not necessary to start bombing and shelling cities and towns, because at the end of this war there will be negotiations and we will have a new agreement on peace. Why do we need to pay in lives and in damage before we get there? Can't we just shortcut the route to those discussions which will end the war?